That's about the second grade. One-room schoolhouse. First to the 8th grade. One teacher. But that's the way schools used to be, you know. And then 1938. I don't know, that's an old Indian. And we went back to Iowa and it was sitting in the backyard and I'm climbing all over it. So everybody said to my dad, get that kid off that motorcycle. It might tip over, you know, and hurt him. My dad shook his head and said, he's got to learn somehow. Right? So that was his approach on a lot of things. So
That was me.
I must have pocket dialed you or something. Who is this? Well, I'm running a little tour, a little talk right now. So call me back. Or whatever. Okay?
It's $5,000 Bluetooth hearing aid.
Well, the first guy, this is the starting of the collection, right here. 1946, I got my first tattoo, and that's the guy's business card. So I walked out of that shop with business card, heart with mother, and so that was the start of this collection that's all over this place.
I'm going to show people where the card is. All right? It's in here.
Okay.
This is number
Wow,
one.
really, man? That's
Wow.
the card.
That's the card. We found it. He's like, I said, I think I've seen that card. He said, I'm not even sure it exists. I'm like, I'm looking for it. And about a week ago, I'm like, Lyle, come over here. This is the card.
Wow.
Oh, that's so cool.
So when I walked over the threshold of that first tattoo shop, I never realized where the hell it was going to take me.
That's life, man.
You know. So
That's a super
But I
rare
got dropped
picture
off
of
in a
Lyle
time
Tuttle.
slot
That piece not finished.
that no other tattoo artist will ever have. You know, it's just, well, I said last night that it's the most fortunate man in the world. So anyhow, well, that tattoo right there was $75 back. Not when this card, but this was like in the early 50s. And this is some of my first flash. I was telling Danielle, Jesus Christ, don't hang that stuff up because the artistic could the flash. I mean, God damn, you get killed if you put that on somebody today. So they, and Bob Petty was the guy that I got my first equipment from.
All the artwork on there is the originals.
If you wanted to be a
Only the
tattoo
cards
artist
are
back in those days, and you went to a tattoo artist and told him, I want to be a tattoo artist, you hit a goddamn brick wall. I mean, seriously. But in essence, you was going up and telling the man, I want to be your competition. So there was that brick wall. So Paul Petty, a tattoo artist in San Francisco for years, one of his cards on Barcadero here, built machines and stuff, but he wouldn't offer them to anybody except with somebody in the trade, because there was a goddamn real credo among the guys. So anyhow, my dad, being a general contractor, was building a school over in Lake County, and the subcontractor that put all the windows in the place, his name was Eddie. So I was talking to him, gravitated towards the name Eddie, and I said, there's a tattoo artist in San Francisco named Eddie. Hell, that's my brother, my in.
Wow.
That was my in. So anyhow, so that's C.J. Eddie Flesh. This is Duke's Flesh. He was, and he's the one that was, Burt Grimm was one of his heroes because he came from St. Louis. Burt Grimm was in St. Louis. So then I heard Burt Grimm all the time. So I took a trip to Southern California, met Burt, who was the most romping, stomping, goddamn tattoo artist in the world, Burt Grimm. I mean, he just, I never thought about getting tattooed all over, but goddamn, you get around Bert, you want to jerk all your clothes off and get tattooed. And so anyhow, my back piece was when Brooklyn Joe Lieber, who tattooed in San Francisco Bay Area, lived in Alameda, had some tracings, and when he died, his work effects got scattered, which happens a lot of times because the widow just off the stuff to people. You know, they don't want it around. They don't realize there really wasn't that much value to tattoo stuff. It wasn't the collectors are now. I mean, I think there's 28 tattoo museums in the United States. Of course, they're small. They're sort of like flat stock. I mean, they're like a lot of copies and stuff like that. I have a secret feeling that they're trying to give their tattoo studio, which is looked down on by the general public, or used to be, to give it a little bit of distinction of museum, right? So anyhow, so we had a whole bunch of tracings that was floating around. I was tattooing over in Oakland at the time, and I unrolled one of them. There's these two eagles, suns that, you know, I know that Duel in the Sun, that was a movie, that first movie that Jane Russell was in. And so these are San Francisco cards. Fred Thornton tattooed on Market Street. And back in those days, tattoo shops weren't in storefronts, they were in arcades, which was great because you had a little cubicle in the arcade. They had shooting galleries in there. They had sometimes archery range up in the front. Coming into, they had like a slum jewelry counter. It was just cheap plastic jewelry. They were selling servicemen. It was generally a hot dog stand and a shoe shine stand. No two were set up alike, and it was on Market Street. And Market Street, I got my first tattoo in 1946, and if you walked out and looked down Market Street, all you seen was white hats bobbing down there because the sailors, because a lot of the fleet was here. So then, as you progress back to like shooting gallery, they call them mug joints, photography studios. They'd have some young ladies working in there, big bazooms, and everything else, and so they could hustle pictures on these sailors, and then the sailor could mail the thing home. Right? So anyhow, there was a hustle bustle to it now. Tattoo shops nowadays are furnished with neon and yuppies. Back before, there was a lot more cooking around. So that was, and I'm not saying that, then they started gravitating towards going into private studios. But they were generally connected with pool halls, bars, back of the bars, front of the bar. But they were in the swim. That's where there was a lot of foot traffic and everything else. And for 30 years, I tattooed next to the Greyhound bus station. You have to be near a landmark, and everybody knows where the bus station is, you know? Every cab driver, you know. So I know that I was bought a building on Columbus Avenue in 1976. I went over and I set a private studio up. I couldn't compete with my goddamn tattoo studio. It was down next to the Greyhound bus station, wall-to-wall winos and things like that, because everybody knew where that son of a bitch was at. And I'm sitting over there. They didn't go to there for my name, Lyle Tuttle, or anything else. They went because they could find it. Mm-hmm. So you have to be near a landmark. And in a high transit area. Because I think that tattooing, or at least used to be, was a hunch item. It was something like, let's get a tattoo. You know, so out of all the people that's walking through the past your door, people get the hunch. And you can only, if one thing wrong with tattooing is it's a service. If you're selling out of an inventory, but you have to make your product right there on the spot. And goddamn tattoos don't go, you can't throw them off from across the room, so they take time. That's why it's a limited income in a way. But you don't have to worry about being out of stock either. So anyhow, so Duke, and he's flashed, and Duke was the guy that really introduced color to the West Coast, and I'm talking about multiple color, like blue. I tattooed most of my career with red, green, and black. I think that a tattoo, after you wind up outlining it and black shading it, you look at it and it's ready to wrap up and go home. The color is just the eyes and involuntary muscle. Goes to flashes of light, warts on the nose, and things like that. And so color, so he introduced color. Now this was some flash that I drew when I was working with Duke. So from there I went to Long Beach and worked with Bert Grimm, and I worked in a little shop that was 5 foot by 7 foot. And it was on Cedar Way, and that was the street to come off of Ocean Avenue and went down to the Cyclone Racer, which was the roller coaster. I mean, there was like thousands of people go by there. And of course, tattooing wasn't as popular as it is today and everything else. And they would wind up being judgmental. So I had a sign. It was on 7 foot deep, 5 foot wide, so you were like really encapsulated in there. And it wound up to, so I had a sign that said, tattooing's my business. If you don't like tattoos, that's your business. Scram. You know? Keep your goddamn opinion to yourself, you know? So anyhow, they, some flash here's Duke and me. I think there's a card here with Duke and myself. He put my first tattoo on. Then I went to work for him over in Oakland a few years later. He needed some money, so I bought half interest in the place. A certain amount of time after that. He needed more money, so now he worked for me. So that was the whole turnaround. But anyhow, mentioning that small shop in Long Beach, I'd been working with Duke with all of them colors. I had the shop all set up. Bert come down to inspect my shop. Because I was working, it was his shop. And he said, he wore suspenders, he put his thumbs in his suspenders a lot of times and stretch them out and stuff. He said, boy, if you want to make any money in this business, you better get rid of, I don't know, those colors. I mean, it's just, it takes time to put it on. Most people were working with red, green, and black. And so Duke, they didn't really like him introducing those colors. I mean, color's been around for a long time, but he was a hell of a good artist. I mean, Pop Eddie put a chest piece on me, and that old son of a bitch hurt me so bad that I wore it for 7 years. I wore an outline of an eagle for the Korean War, for Christ's sakes, you know. So Duke was fairly easy. There's some people that's got a heavy hand. I mean, even today, there's some people that hurt you a hell of a lot worse, you know. You're not getting off scot-free. There's nobody that's painless, you know. Well, there's people that call themselves painless. But and if I was not tattooed all over right now, starting off again, I don't know if I'd get tattooed all over, because that's a hell of a lot of punishment. The other day,
I was just gonna say all the there's a lot more panels and Bert Grimm, then there's the pipe panels, your trip, your marine years, the Chicago trip. There's 3 or 4 panels there.
Duke could cover up more goddamn square inches of skin. He had all the goddamn tricks. Now there's easy. He doesn't go through and do a whole bunch of involvement. Put an eye on, just circle, eyeball, that's it. Some people probably take a half hour to put a goddamn, so it's, but yeah, Bert I was carrying that tracing around, and Bert looked at it and he says, I'd like to put that on you, boy. So he did, and I already had my eagle, so he did everything from the waist up except the eagle on my chest. And that was 2 people. So this is all Bert. And, well, I think I learned my people handling skills from Bert, because goddamn, he could defuse any situation. I don't care what was going down. Bert could defuse it in about 2 or 3 words. So I think I learned my people handling skills from Bert. And to be a tattoo artist, you gotta have some people handling skills, It's not all choir boys that come in to get tattooed. So anyhow, this is a lot of Bert's work. And so then, some of Bert's later flash where he was forced to put more colors in. And then I started tattooing in 1949 professionally, and the Korean War was coming on. And so back in those days, if you got your pre-induction physical papers, you was locked into going in the Army. And I wanted to be a CB. I was going to be in the service. But I got a color problem. I can't read that color line chart. And so I couldn't get in. So I wanted to join the Marine. And I didn't know that I would rather have a sister in a whorehouse as a brother in the Army until I got in the Marines. Which there's that inter-service rivalry that goes on all the time, which is good-natured. I mean, they all go together when the time ships are down, but they do bicker back and forth. Like Coast Guard guys, they say you have to be 6 foot tall to be in the Coast Guard. As the ship sinks, you can walk ashore. So, anyhow, this is Marine Corps stuff. I had this rubber stamp, and my middle name's Gilbert, so I used to use the Lyle Tuttle, but then I dropped that along. I don't even have it on my driver's license or anything anymore. So this is, I'm standing up in the back row, but I was in the back row in school, so sat in the front row, in the back row out of the road. And so I got discharged out of the Marines in 1954. It was a friend that come in the tattoo shop. And I was a tattoo artist before I went in the service, which was really fortunate. Because I wound up, every place I was stationed at was tattoo shops. So they needed tattoo shops on the weekends and paydays. So I could pay people to do my guard duty if I had it. Go in town and make good money. So that was very fortunate. So that, I worked with a lot of the old timers, which was really great. So I took this trip to Long Beach, met Bert and everything else, we clicked. So I went down and worked with him, but I didn't like Los Angeles. I still don't like Los Angeles. The bitch is too big. I come from a small village, San Francisco. We're only 49 square miles here, Goddamn Los Angeles, nowadays it just goes from one burg to the other. Like probably between Los Angeles and San Diego is just almost all town. You just can't get away from it. So I didn't like it. And I was wanted to make a move. So a hot spot for tattooing back in those days was Chicago. So I talked to Bert about it. Chicago's a bad place because all the tattoo shops was run by the mafia. And they were very controlled. They'd hire a tattoo artist. He put his flash on the wall. The next day he went in, the goddamn thing had glass over it. So you couldn't leave with your flash. And they beat a few tattoo artists up real bad, like Colorado. They wound up working him over in the basement real good. He wound up with a nervous tick. So Bert says, no. So a friend of his named Joe Broadbent was building an arcade in Anchorage, Alaska. And so I went up and worked for Joe Broadbent, or worked in his arcade, which was a pool hall, shoe shine stand, hot dog stand, up in the front of the place. And I remember that first day that I worked, and then Bert told me when I went up there, he says, triple your prices. So we were putting names on for $1, they went to $3. So the first big military bases, so I was wearing those half Wellington boots, they got open slip-on boot, dress boot. So you never seen 50s and 100s back in those days, 20s was, so I would stick the 20s in the boots, both of them. Keep a roll of like 5s and 10s in my pocket to make change. So I went up there and I finally had to dig that money out to get that boot off because I'd shoved it down in there. And like a big cabbage there on the bed. And I counted it up that first payday, first day I worked in Alaska, $538. And this was back in 1958, I guess. That was a lot of goddamn money. So anyhow, they working with Duke and Oakland, a friend of his came through and he drove a moving van and he was going to Fort Wayne, Indiana with a load of furniture. So I went back with him, but I got off in Chicago. So then during that time, I'd worked with Ralph Johnstone down in Oceanside when I was in the Marines. And so Tats Thomas was back there, Red Farrell, Jerry Pope, and a lot of, that are tattooed luminaries today. And so I went back, got tattooed by a lot of them. I went up to Milwaukee, and Alman Dietzel was working up there, and then so was Tex Rowe. And so that was quite a trip, meeting more old. So I really had the opportunity to meet a lot of the people today that are, names. And the centerpiece of a lot of collections. I was just talking to a guy today that out front that had, I think he's got 20 sheets of Ralph Johnstone's flash. So.
Is that Nick Colella?
No?
The guy
Is
from
he here?
Jason
He was
Beck
here
from the
yesterday.
arcade in
Okay.
The guy from the arcade in Oceanside. The guy from the arcade in Oceanside.
No, this guy tattoos up in Sacramento. I don't know his name, And I meet so goddamn many people that, but they'll come up and say, you don't recognize me? Oh, last time I met I had a full beard. Or I hadn't had the sex change yet, or some goddamn thing. And then the clock ticks on all of us. We get older, so it's sort of a mental game and all these shows. So anyhow, this flash from the different people and some of the things that I collected during that trip. And I wish to Christ I would have had the focus that I gained after a few years of collecting. I've collected, but I started tattooing, or started collecting tattoo machines to see what other people had done. So for years I remodeled other people's tattoo machines before I started building my own. And so that was the start, the seed of a collection now. We've got 411 tattoo machines. In the machine exhibit here, I've got over 1,200 of the aggregate figure in the warehouse vault at home. So,
Guarded by a cat. Don't try anything anymore. And her name's Lucky.
lucky.
The Duchess now, I'm sorry. You renamed her.
Well, my daughter loves cats, and so she's got a couple of cats, and they're feral cats. They've wandered in, you know. So there was another little goddamn ugliest cat in the world. It's got long hair. What's his name? I don't know. Everybody thinks she's pretty, but I don't know. She's I don't know. But anyhow, we called her Lucky because she was lucky to be there. And now I've changed the name the Duchess. But she's a sweet little cat, and I guess it's my cat because I'm the one that gets hollered at. I can smell the cat box. So it means that Papa's cleaning the Duchess's cat box. So anyhow, here's Almond Diesel, and then Frederick Bomey was a baker that got interested in tattooing and is a well-known name today. Almond Diesel was I believe a Dane and came over here. Back when he was coming over here, and this was back, it was still sailing ships. Of course, he had steamships also. But the boat that he was in sank in the St. Lawrence River coming to the States. So he could jump either way, to Canada or the United States. Now, you know, this goddamn immigration stuff. I just signed a young Japanese fellow, what's his name?
Takashi?
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 Yeah. I signed his papers last night to extend his working visa.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well.
I call him Hori Kamikaze. Because he's got sort of a wild look in his eyes, and I can see him back in World War II. I'll be flying a kamikaze, I don't know. There was an Italian pilot, kamikaze pilot. So he wrote a book about it. His 27 missions.
His 20s.
Right. So anyhow, Diesel was a real fine-eyed, good tattoo artist. And nowadays it would be impossible, but there isn't a real style out there of people. They're doing that like total realistic stuff. People would come in for years and want to get a portrait tattooed on them. I said, impossible. That would have been impossible to be then and now. I always said if it wasn't for stars, I used to use a lot of stars in my work, I've been drawing stick men. So I was a traditionalist flash artist, where now people don't put flash on the walls. You go in, they talk to the customer and everything else, and they have to read their fucking aura. So, this is Diesel's work. Spiderweb was a sailor, tattooed around the Chicago area. He went up and picked out an armband that Diesel put on him. And believe it or not, he still has it today. I couldn't pay him enough money to get him to come here, the pastor knows. I told him, hey, I invented that game. Now they turn around, turn it on me. So anyhow, he told Almond Diesel, I want everything with the star. So he's talking to people, I'm sure. He turns around and looks. It's got the goddamn star. And so he said, I didn't want the star. Diesel said, that's the way it comes. So back tattoo shops used to be like the orchestra, and you called the tunes, you know. So that's of the trip. So these are business cards I collected. This is a Ralph Johnstone piece right here. And he was also a fine artist. And I was talking to this fellow from Sacramento a little while ago. Let's see. Supposedly Ralph Johnstone there's a Ralph Johnson and a Ralph Johnstone, so you don't want to get those confused. But anyhow, Ralph Johnstone's father worked for the Wright brothers and got killed in a plane crash. So the Wright brothers put Ralph Johnstone through art school. Now that's urban legend that I just heard out in front here talking to a fellow. But it could very well be true. And one thing you want to know about tattooing history is there's a lot of shades of gray that, well, it's just shades of gray. And tattooing is the art that art history forgot. I mean, so it's very difficult to research tattooing going back before this publicity craze that got caused. It started around 1960 and it got a lot of coverage, tattooing. Before that, it was to find a picture of a tattoo shop would be, I found one that was in San Francisco here. A goddamn parade was going up the street. The photographer took a picture of the parade, but on the other side of the street was a tattoo shop. So it's very difficult to get information back then. So anyhow, dates on, then Ned Resin right here, Sailor Ned. Pictures of him here. Hell of a nice guy. Spike Russell, he was back there in the arcades working for the mafia. So then what happened was, in Chicago, they raised the age limit to 21. So if you take the people from 18 to 21 out of your mix, you know, out of your customer base, it really cuts into your business. So they sort of spread out and went different places. And so, due to the fact of, you know, who I mentioned that owned these arcades and everything else, the basement was full of stuff they'd sort of confiscated and wound up with from tattoo artists. So Cliff Raven bought it. And he had a warehouse out by, I remember the day I was back there packing it. Soldiers Fields right near that, and there was some kind of a baseball game going on. You could hear that crowd, you know, going. So I bought this stuff we couldn't settle on a price. And I mean, we wasn't haggling over the price. We